Hi, guys. Yeah, thank you for the great introduction. I want to talk to you about my current, I don't want to say business because it's something very different. It's a university. And I want to talk to you about how we think higher education needs to change and how learning in general, not only in higher education but also in schools, can be improved and how we do this. Yeah, my name is Tom, and it all started with this guy, or even a few years earlier. That's me when I was 15 years old, pretty nerdy. I thought these kind of pictures were cool. They were on my very first homepage. And this was the age when I started doing software development on my own. So I don't know, I think at 7 or 8 years of age, I started using the computer, playing around like probably many of you. But I also got a lot of interest into not just using the computer as a consumer, but also on how to create programs on my own and how can I use it as a tool to maximize my creativity, so to say. And yeah, I did this through all of my youth. Coding websites on the side for other businesses, smaller shops, like earning some money on the side. Yeah, and at some point when I was 19, I had to look for some place to study. And for me, it was very hard to commit to studying something like computer science or informatic here in Germany, because all of these study programs appealed very theoretical, very mathematical to me, and actually they didn't portray software development as something much more creative. And for me, it always felt much more as a creative thing to do. And so I ended up studying business instead at a small business school in Cologne, in Germany here, where I'm originally from. And I learned a lot about small private universities and how these work. Actually, I didn't learn too much from my business studies because, business studies are very general sort of studies after all. But I learned a lot about small universities, and I liked it. Although when I finished university, the last thing I was thinking about was actually like going to university again, being at my own or another university. So I started building some startups and selling them. We heard that in the intro. But over all those years, it always came back to me and struck me why there was in my eyes, no good education for software developers. Because all the people I was recruiting, all the designers, developers, and also, product managers, how we call them today, all of them learned it on their own. And basically, none of them were educated during their studies. So we want to change that, and for that we founded Code. We offer 3 study programs here in Berlin in the fields of software engineering, obviously, but also in interaction design, which is a lot about user interface design, user experience design, and thinking about how humans can interact with software and how we can create software that is fun to use and easy to use for humans. And product management, which is a very important role these days to bring business and tech closer together, to think about, okay, what are you going to build in the first place, and track the success of these things. And the important thing is that these 3 roles together form a digital product development team, and only these 3 roles together. And I think that's also something that's often forgotten, that people think about coding and software development, but they don't think about these other 2 roles. We started last October with 88 students in our very first year. We selected them out of over 2,000 applications that reached us, so a very surprising start for us, to be honest, because that's much more than we anticipated originally. And this year we're probably going to take in more than 120 students in September this year for the second class. And by the way, since we are at a startup conference here, 70% of our founders are thinking about founding a startup, and I think they're actually really thinking about it. So we will have a quite high number of founders from Code very soon, I hope. How did we end up here? How did we do this? So we are an accredited, state-recognized University of Applied Sciences, Fachhochschule here in Berlin. That means all of these programs that I just showed you are bachelor degrees, Bachelor of Arts degrees, like you would get at any other typical university. And this wouldn't be so hard, actually, to make it happen. But it's really hard if you try to be as different as possible from existing universities and at the same time get it accredited. But it was very important to us because we want to innovate the higher education system from the inside out. And we think that, that there is a lot more you can do, even if you're an accredited institution, you just have to do it. And many established institutions just don't try. So we handed in a very long document, obviously, lots of paper to the Council of Science and Humanities in 2016, and had a lot of talks with them, and got recognized last year in July, shortly before starting. And then in October, we started with our very first class. Here's a photo of the 88 and the first professors and team, and it is meant to portray that also people who do software development and digital product development can have fun outside and enjoy the sun. We are located in the new factory campus, which is at the end of Görlitzer Park in Kreuzberg-Treptow. A very nice building with more than 14,000 square meters of co-working and creative space, and it's a great deal for us because we can mix and mingle with all the other creatives and freelancers and founders who are part of the factory community already. And it's a really nice building in general. They have a gigantic ball pool with, I don't know, 40,000 plastic balls or more, which is a lot of fun, especially for our younger students. We have a great library, and so on. You get it. But what I want to talk about actually is what we do differently than others. I think one of the, let's say, starting points for this whole idea is that the world of technology is more and more complex and versatile than ever. Meaning that these days, it's not enough to only have computer scientists to develop software, but you need a much wider range of people and skills to create good digital products. And that's only possible because we are already standing on the shoulders of giants. Because as a software developer, you rarely, very, very rarely develop your own database system or your own operating system or your own cryptography algorithms. You use what's already there and you incorporate it into a real product. And that requires a very different kind of skill set because you're meant to be much more product and result-driven than only looking on the ground-laying technologies. And by the way, this also means, obviously, that we don't want to replace computer science, but we think there is much more to software development than only computer science. And the internet obviously changed our access to knowledge. So, I mean, we all know that, but when we look at schools and at universities, it's still not assumed in most study programs. So, for me, that means that it's much less important these days to have knowledge right in your head, but it's much more important to teach students how they can acquire new knowledge and how they can transform knowledge into real skills. And the constant change, especially in the fields of technology, obviously, requires these self-learning skills. In Germany, we say Selbstlernkompetenz. So it's like every university claims that they are trying to train this ability. But to be honest, I think most of them don't do it radically enough. So we really focus on empowering students to learn on their own. So we don't serve them knowledge on a platter. You won't find many lecturers at our university because that makes it too easy for students. It's typically these days when you have when you study somewhere, you get a pretty exact schedule of, okay, you have to visit these and these courses, pass these and these exams, and then you will be finished. And we think that's too easy, and we think that doesn't train this ability of students to learn on their own and to do their own research. A very general point also, we talk a lot about AI these days, and I also get a lot of questions from future students whether it makes sense to study software development anymore because, I don't know, software developers will be replaced by AI very soon. I always yeah, I always tell them that I think as soon as software developers get replaced by AI, we have much more difficult discussions in other fields. But I, in general, believe that machines will augment humans and will help us humans to be better and to do more. Meaning that a nurse can be a doctor in the future, for example, because there are digital devices who help to diagnose things. So also for software developers, I think it's getting easier and easier to create digital products, but it still requires a lot of skills, obviously. And when we look at schools and academia compared to autodidactic learners like myself when I was young, you will notice that they, in my eyes, put learning upside down. Meaning, when I, as a human, learn something on my own, I typically start by trying around, doing my trial and error. As a child, I don't know, I try to walk, but I will fall over and over again. But every time I learn something and I want to dig deeper and get more interested in the theoretical backgrounds after my initial interest is sparked. And when we look at schools and universities, it's typically they first teach us the theory without us showing for what exactly we need it, and always claim like, yeah, at some point later you will notice why this is important. But the problem with this is that we will forget most of the stuff we learned until there when we actually come to that point. And in general, I think that this like telling people the theory before showing them the practice is against our nature and is a very ineffective form of learning, therefore. And also frontal teaching, like I'm doing it right now, basically, is also very convenient, obviously, and perhaps it is even efficient, but it's not very effective. Because, as I just said, I think that most of the knowledge you learn in this kind of teaching, you will forget very quickly. And I don't know about you, but when I think back about my school time and also my university time, like most of the stuff I passed at some point in exams, I have forgotten these days. And so I think that the most important thing is first to spark curiosity and interest in people, to motivate them, to have an intrinsic motivation to learn something. And this is forgotten most of the time in traditional learning. So what we try is we have a strictly project-based educational approach, meaning that our students can pick projects and projects that we create together with companies, together with other organizations, to offer great learning experiences. And then students decide which projects they want to work on and learn on. And then within these projects and through these projects, they learn the theoretical backgrounds they need to solve, this project or to create this project after all. And the most important thing here is that they make the decision what they want to learn and that they have a clear goal in mind, and then it's much easier for them to also acquire the theoretical knowledge. And for that to work, professors these days need to be much more like mentors instead of like people who just transfer knowledge. So typically it's still like a professor feels like, okay, I know everything and you're gonna listen now, I'm gonna tell you how it works. And that, as I said, I think is not the right way to go. But instead professors need to say, hey, I know that I don't know that much, but I'm gonna help you to help us to find it out together. And also very important is that we learn with each other and from each other all the time, and I think most universities forget about that too. So most universities have this relationship of there are the students, the consumers, so to say, and the professors, the people who possess knowledge. We do this in a very different way in that we say the students themselves are also super important, and they learn much more from each other probably than they will learn from professors. And we have a lot of tools and formats and events to incentivize and to foster this kind of learning that students help each other. And in general, community is much more important than acquiring knowledge, I think, because if you look at universities like WHU, which is very, very well known for bringing up a lot of founders, I think very few of WHU students will tell you that they succeeded in founding a business because of their accounting lectures. Yeah, and teams are more powerful than lone warriors these days anyway, so we are always trying to combine developers, designers, and product managers together in teams to work on these projects so they learn a lot about each other. And this is so important because reality doesn't know any boundaries between the subjects of software development, design, and product management, but we still teach it in a very, limited and unconnected way in traditional institutions. And also I think that many people already bring knowledge with them, and that certainly is true for our students because most of them already have a lot of experience in software development when they join us, so we want to offer them a way to learn on their own pace. And we do this without grades and without exams because we think they are a bad motivator, because you're always trying to game them. And instead, we're focusing on something called a competency framework and more complicated stuff like this. But I'm missing the time to tell you more about that right here. And so our general principle all the time is we try to define the learning goals for the students and motivate them to reach those learning goals, but we try not to tell them how to do it too much because we think that's up to them to find out. And our motto is therefore, learning is productive failing, and then you will also notice that our logo stands for Curiosity-Driven Education. Thank you very much.